Okay, I'm going to go ahead and get started because this is a very impressive bio. Next up is Dr. Lisa VanHoose. She is a clinical professor in the physical therapy department at Baylor University. Dr. VanHoose received her PhD in rehabilitation science and Masters of Public Health from the University of Kansas Medical Center. She has been an advocate for movement of all persons, including the elimination of social policies and practices that are barriers to movement-friendly environments. Dr. VanHoose served as the 2012 to 2016 president of the Academy of Oncologic Physical Therapy of the American Physical Therapy Association, and she currently provides oncology rehabilitation services through the EGMA Collective. And she is just an amazing woman who does amazing work and always makes me feel like I'm able to do more. So thank you, Dr.
All right, so I am Lisa VanHoose, and I'm really excited to share time and space with y'all. This is my first Pain Summit meeting, but I'm going to tell you how this is going to start off, right? So the AV guys, which they have names, I just don't know what it is, right? So I'm going to group them. They were like, we need you to stand over here, right? Because they were like, if you stand over there, you just look like where's the beef lady? So I'm going to be standing here for most of the day, and we'll see how this goes because I am a rule breaker by nature. So I'm going to try to stand here, but I know I'm going to move, right? So we're going to be talking about how you need to consider using Zipcode data, local and state data as part of your evaluation process and why that's important. And so in the spirit of Simon Sinek, if you've ever read the book Start with the Why, here's your why. Number one, your bias is going to make you think that you know more than you know. And the gentleman who just spoke, Matt, just kind of summed that up with a lot of really great words. But your judgment is probably wrong most of the time. That's number one. Number two, zip code, local, state, county data can give you some easy context around your patient's experience if you will take the time to sit down and go through the data. And now they've made it so easy for you. So I'm going to show you some easy ways to do it. So that's number two. But the caveat with number two is right, you still got to validate it with the human in front of you. Because any of this population health data is going to give you averages, and as we know, people are unique. So you still need to validate it, all right? And then number three, even though we think that we're doing biopsychosocial, most of the time we're still doing biomedical. So we're in that place where we're like early adopters, and I'm going to own the fact that this is going to be a very U.S.-centric presentation, and I'll tell you why here in another slide. So I'm looking forward to learning from those of you who are not from the U.S., but I'm going to air a whole bunch of our dirty laundry. I'm going to talk bad about us. It's going to be like the next Housewives of Rehab, right? So it's going to be good. It's going to be really good. All right. So we're going to be using a platform called Mentimeter, and you use it with UC. And my fear in life is I'm going to step off this stage. So we're going to see how that goes too. So what you're going to need to do, and let me get you the code. Show the vote code. Is on your phone or in your browser. This is my favorite part of the presentation. This makes me feel like a talk job. Go to www.menti.com. Put in code number 69516341. Once again, that code is 69516341. And my first question, and this is just for us to kind of test the technology out, is what's your song? What song best describes your life? And you can pick whatever you want. It can have cuss words in it. It's your song. Whatever song you like. And so while you're telling us a little bit about you, I'm going to tell you a little bit about me. So I identify as cisgender. I identify as Black, but my ethnicity is African American. I identify as being high income now, but my poverty mindset is very close because it was part of my journey and it still continues to be part of my journey because I come from a tribe of people that primarily are low income. So therefore, my money is our money. Some of y'all understand that. Somebody felt that in their soul. I now have high educational attainment, but I am very intentional about speaking at a 6th and 7th grade level, which is going to test some of your implicit bias because you're going to be like, ooh, she's not that educated. Ooh, uneducated Black woman. That's not true. That is really, really not true. But I try to speak at a 6th and 7th grade level because you never know who's in a room. And I always want the information to be inclusive. And I don't need to always use really big terms because I'm pretty cool with just being me. And if you don't like it, you ain't gotta see me tomorrow because you're gonna go home tonight. So it's totally okay. All right, so let's see what she put. Okay, somebody's repping the Jonas Brothers right off the bat. Okay, so girls just wanna have fun. I made some generalizations about who that was. Somebody said I want to dance with somebody, Whitney Houston, Unbroken. Oh my goodness, the landslide is like the best, but whose version is it? Huh? Okay, there we go. Everybody wants to rule the world. I don't even have to see that. I know what that is. Living on a prayer. Hold on, go back. Don't do that yet. There we go. So we got living on a prayer. What else we got? Okay, me and this mouse is gonna fight because I am not an HP person. I'm a Mac person. All right, so stay in, get low. Who is Twerk Team USA in here? Because I know that was not our Canadian persons. It was not someone Irish. It was an American that was like, Twerk Team USA. All right, we've got Unwritten, we've got One Man Band, we've got Keep It Up. Let's see if I can learn this system. Can she be taught? There we go. Oos! Y'all are clowning. Southern Hospitality. So we got a ludicrous voice, we got some Iggy, Eminem. What else we got on here? It's Your World, Part 1 and Part 2. So you did the long version. All right. So here's some of my disclosures and disclaimers. I've been a PT since 1996, as she already told you. I'm at Baylor University. They are a Christian organization. That means I also identify as Christian faith, but I have a t-shirt that says I'm Christian and I cuss. And that is very true. I am also board certified clinical specialist in oncological PT. I am the founder and owner of the Ujima Collective, which we can talk about that offline, but we're in the middle of building a community center in partnership with the community because we truly believe in community rehab as a broader definition, not just like rehab vocation, but how do you come with the community, let them define what the needs are, and then you use your skill set and your gift to build something to meet that need. I have no conflicts of interest, not that I know of right now. Here's what I don't know. I already told y'all this is my first pain summit. So you're gonna start trying to ask me a whole bunch of things about pain. There are too many other smart people in this room. What I do well is I do intercultural development, health equity, health disparities. I know enough about pain to be dangerous. I trained as a basic scientist, so I understand the words, but when y'all wanna get in the weeds, that's not, All right? So therefore, I don't know the full uniqueness of other disciplines. So for my OT colleagues, I'm gonna rep y'all out. There are gonna be times I'm gonna be like, OT needs to talk about that. Massage therapist needs to talk about that. Psych definitely needs to talk about that, right? There are a few other people in this room. Also the realities of other healthcare in other countries. I will own the fact that I am a tourist. I have traveled the world. I have been in your healthcare systems, and I might use some words that make you think I know what I'm talking about. I don't. It's kind of like people right now in this like social justice, DEI space, equity space. You're a tourist. You got the words, you got a t-shirt, but you don't really know what you're talking about yet. But it's okay. Because if you stay long enough, then we might adopt you. So I hope that happens with us today as we talk about this pain thing, that you will keep me and adopt me. And hopefully in the future, I will have conflicts of interest. Hopefully we will build some partnerships and you'll be like, okay, she wasn't that crazy. So I can still work with her. And I know crazy is a triggering word for some people. I apologize to you. It is part of my lexicon. I will love to talk to you why it triggers you, and then I will adjust the next time I'm with you. But from the parts I come from, we use it a lot. All right, so although I work at Baylor, I do not live in Texas. Don't put that on me. But I do live in Louisiana. So that's a whole nother connotation. Yeah, you're going to be my person today. So regardless of how bad this goes, he gonna be like, yeah, Lisa, and I'm gonna be like, yeah, us too, it was fabulous. I live in Louisiana. I did grow up in Arkansas, so the South is very important to me. All right, so here's some things you probably already noticed. I'm gonna squirrel. For those of you who don't know what squirrel means that I thoroughly enjoy talking to humans. So at the end of the day, if we spend 60 minutes, you just talking back and forth to me and we figure out how to save the world, I don't care if we get to these 50 slides. That's kind of how I live my life. So for those of y'all who are type A and you know who you are, I'm probably gonna piss you off today. But I promise you, you're gonna get your money's worth. And we're going to give you the PDFs, and you all can read. You're very educated. It'll be all right. The other thing is whatever I say today, you'll notice that there's like this cloud, which I told you I'm a squirrel, and this water. That means whatever I say to you today, I believe it in permanence. Tomorrow it might be different. You might have a conversation with me tomorrow, and somebody might have gave me an article, and I'm like, ooh, I jacked that up. I failed forward. I need to pivot everything I say. Just know that's just part of the human experience, right? So I love the gentleman, Matt, who spoke before us. We only know what we think we know today. And that's about all it is. So therefore, I'm going to need your grace, because there's going to be a whole bunch of sinning in this presentation. Because there is a variety of people on site, online. So that means I'm going to trigger somebody. I'm going to tick somebody off. I'm going to upset you. You're going to be like, oh, she didn't use the right word. Or, man, why is she a therapist? Is she fat? Yeah, I am. That's part of my origin story. We can talk about that later on because I have my own pain story. This was not always me, but it is who I am right now, and you're going to love it. So it's going to be good. And if you don't, you leaving tomorrow. So it don't matter. It does not bother me if you look away, get on your phone. Doesn't faze me at all. I have 4 adult children, 6 grandchildren. It does not faze me when people don't listen. It's a lived experience in my life. So here's what I can tell you I will do. I believe in the hero's journey. And I have yet to meet someone in the healthcare ecosystem that doesn't want to be somebody's hero. But the thing is if you think about the hero's journey, if you've ever looked at Joseph Campbell's work, everybody needs a guide. Every hero had a guide. Someone who could say, hey, you might want to go this route, or have you thought about doing this? And so I will serve as your intercultural guide. And you got me for the dirt price. I'm cheap today. Cheap, right? So I consider myself to be an intercultural guide, and I admit I will be a guide for anyone who understands the fact that everybody has a culture. And that's really important for those of you who identify as white, because we have sold y'all a really good narrative of that when we talk about culture, we talk about everybody but y'all. And that's part of the reason why there are a lot of people upset, especially in the United States. Those of you in the UK, Canada, Ireland, I know y'all watching us and y'all going, America has really lost it. Yeah, we have. We have. Because we have somehow created this system where people feel like we're having a dialogue that does not include them. So there are 8 billion people on the planet. That means there's 8 billion cultures. And so it is unrealistic for you as a hero to think that you're going to be able to know all 8 billion people. Like, I thought Matt's presentation was awesome. I know there are some of you in the room that was like, I ain't got time for that. Right? You're like, because he's like, we just had that conversation. But we know that what Matt was talking about is key to you improving your therapeutic alliance, right? Your working relationship with the clients that you have been blessed to serve. Because in their journey, you're their guide. And they're on their hero journey. But I love this slide because I love this little sliver. Because in my mind, there is a gap between what our intentions are and you being this. And for some of us, it is because of the lack of diversity within our workforces. So like in the US, it's primarily around conversations about, if you look at OT, PT, speech, massage therapy, nursing, dentistry, pharmacy, any of the above, we have a very white population having to take care of a very racially and ethnically diverse community. In other places and in other countries, it may be based on positionality. So what is your position in society? It might be based on socioeconomics. It might be based on tribal affiliations. But there is, regardless of where I go, there is a huge difference between who needs the care and who's providing the care. Is he telling me I need to do something?
Online's having a hard time hearing you.
Oh. Is that better? Now, see, online people, you're going to wish you didn't, see? Be careful of what you ask for, because I used to be a cheerleader back in the day. But the thing is we're going to be talking about Zipcode data. We're going to be talking about big data usage. We're behind the curve in regards to using it in our individual practice. So what you see here on the screen is multiple articles that talk about machine learning in regards to chronic pain research. The one at the bottom talks about using big data sets to evaluate patients with chronic pain. The one at the top talks about information models on pain management. The one at the bottom is interesting to me because what they're doing with their data is they're trying to collapse people into 4 categories based on stressor and based on psychology, right? So this conversation about using big data is already being had. Like many of these articles are 2010, 2012. So if you're not using zip code data, some type of big data set, local data, county data, parish data, some other country, tell me, how do you break down your geographics? Huh?
Much the same.
Much the same. Okay, so I didn't sound too ignorant. Okay, good job. He's like, Y'all notice he didn't say no. He was just like, you close. So here's the next question. So are you using zip code, local, county, state data intentionally in your practice? And you got 3 options. And you got 30 seconds. And during that 30 seconds, I'm going to give a shout out to Amber and Andrea. Andrea. Yes. God bless you. All right. Woo, so I think we got a strong answer on that one, right? So hopefully by the end of today's session, you're going to have some ideas, some tangible things that you can take back Monday morning and use. But most of you said no, or you said, girl, I have no clue. I'm just trying to get through making the donuts, right? I'm just trying to get through the evaluation. And so as we talk about the evaluation process, what we're going to center ourselves on, and I get the privilege of the pulpit, is we're going to use nursing's model, which talks about how that the assessment is information collection and gathering. Then you've got the diagnosis. Then you've got your planning period, implementation, and then that evaluation component, where at that point you're going to look at patient status. For most of us, that's also where we're going to give our prognosis. And then you're going to have these reevaluations that are going to talk about what is the effectiveness of the plan that you're using. So we're going to use the nursing 5-step model. We're going to do this on the backdrop of a case study, right? Because the brain loves a great story. And because I already told you I'm new to your world, I had to steal a story. So, because all my stories would have been cancer related. And y'all would have been like, come on, give us something great. So, here we go. So we got a 29-year-old male who presented with a 3-year history of low back pain and an 11-month history of lower extremity paresthesia. This comes from a Journal of Orthopedic Sports Medicine, PT Journal from 2014. I'm going to let you read the last 2 bullets on your own, and you want to read with intent because there's going to be a quiz. And give me a thumbs up when you're ready. Okay. We'll wait about 10 more seconds. And this is where I have to be intentionally inclusive because I read at like 260 words a minute, right? There we go. All right. So his goal, this is his goal. His goal is he wants to be able to walk to school, so he's taking some classes at the college, without a rest period. Right now, it's taking him 2 to 3 rest periods along his way. Also, when he's in class, he's not able to sit. He stays standing most of the time. So he wants to be able to sit for 60 minutes because he feels like he's othering himself being in the classroom constantly standing while his peers are sitting down. And then he wants to be able to initiate an exercise program. So think about what's in your toolbox. What would you start off with? Assessment-wise, what would you start off with? And y'all are the pain science experts of the world. Because it's an international global conference. So what would you start off with from an assessment standpoint? Tests and measures. Or even maybe subjective interview is a test and a measure. And you've got 60 seconds, global experts. So somebody says, I'm going to ask him to share his story. And during this conference, we've learned some really great ways to do that in a way that doesn't come from a place of judgment. Somebody asked, how long can you sit for? Ask person where they want to meet. Ooh, I love that one. So somebody said, I'm starting with the subjective. People are talking about listening. When did all this start? When did it begin? I want to know the last time he was able to perform those goals. That's really good. Ask about daily activities, exercise tolerance, treadmill testing, home, community, and the environment he engages in. And I feel like there's probably a better way to do this. Because it's just giving me this stupid dialogue box. Oh, IT person,
Right arrow.
will it scroll down then? Ah. There we go. She can be taught. It might take a few minutes though. All right, so somebody said a self-efficacy questionnaire. What about those environmental, sociocultural barriers? Somebody's being a little quirky today. They're like, what's your zip code? Because they know we're finna talk about that. Gotta love a good joke. Ask him about what the terrain is on the way to school, right? I love that question, but it's often difficult for patients and caregivers to ask. And so we're going to talk about where are some data sets for you to be able to get that information yourself. This is the worst part. This is like where I feel like I'm failing. All right. So take a couple of minutes, and here's a little more information for you. And once again, give me a thumbs up when you're ready. All right. We got the first 25%ers. Okay. One more thumbs up. Good. Now, y'all saw me. I tried. Here's the second part. All right, last 30 seconds. So out of curiosity, before I show you the next thing, where are you thinking in regards to complexity or acuity? And we'll just throw this one out here as a verbal question. What do you think about this gentleman's story? You made eye contact with me. So, what's your name?
Tristan,
Tristan. Do you want to talk to me?
I have terrible trouble comprehending information from written in a time frame.
I appreciate your vulnerability.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. So, can we call your friend
Oh, yeah.
who basically was like, you doing all right, girl, but you ain't smart. What is your name?
Matt.
Matt. What's your thoughts, Matt?
So I've got stuck on the fact that the patient denied having falling episodes. So to me, that's like, well,
Yes.
it's disempowering. And I don't like the fact that the pain diagram was completed by the PT. That's where I got stuck.
So, for those of you online, Matt's like, there's some inconsistencies in this story based on the patient report. So there would be definitely some additional questions Matt would be asking. All right, so here's one more piece of information. So this is the pain diagram, and I think you should be able to see it online as well. So we've got P1, which is the low back pain. Severity is 10 out of 10 at rest and with activity. Irritability is about 5 minutes of walking brings it on, and it takes 2 minutes for it to subside. Aggravating factors, walking, lying, supine, touching his back, sitting or standing. Easing factors, his gabapentin, and also sleeping on sides. 24-hour pattern, it gets worse throughout the day. And we've got our shaded areas. P2, 10 minutes of sitting brings it on. 2 minutes of standing will allow it to subside. Aggregating factors is sitting. And it doesn't matter. He's tried every chair. He's like, don't come to me with no foolishness about try a different chair. Right? So just hear that story. And then alleviating factors, standing and walking. All right. So we're going to come back to that model. right, to this 5-step model, and I'm finna ask you a question about knowing these other pieces of information, what else are you going to do? So start thinking about your answer now. So what else would you add to that assessment component? Now that you've heard a little bit more about his story. And you got 60 seconds while I try to troubleshoot these batteries. Because right now it's giving me a complex. Because I'm like, I got a PhD, 2 masters, 2 fellowships, NIH researcher, and I can't figure out this thing. All right. So somebody automatically started thinking about environmental risk factors, a nerve conduction study, so an NCS. All right. Alert and oriented ×4. Somebody's like, is there a cognitive concern that we need to be focused on? His emotional state, somebody's interested in a red flag screen. We want some dermatome, myotome testing. Somebody wants to know a little bit more about his 10 out of 10 pain. And they said, I want to visit him and be with him in his context. And that is a great segue, because we're going to talk about some of these big data sets, these interactive maps, where even if you can't get to his home, you can learn a lot about his context just by doing a data search, and it'll take you only about 20 minutes. So, I'll take my flowers on this side of the earth. Okay, so basically at this point, we're gonna stop talking about assessment just for a minute and move on to diagnostics and planning. So these are the outcome measures that they did. What they decided in their clinical reasoning was that a nociceptive component probably wasn't likely. They also decided, even though there were signs and symptoms of neuropathy, they didn't think that that was the predominant mechanism. So they went towards central sensitization. I always struggle with that word. Do y'all agree? What's your name in the purple jacket? Matt. You're another Matt? Yeah. That's a whole Matt team over there? Okay. All right. So Matt's like, yes, I agree with that. So this is a little difficult to read, but they did a beautiful job of laying out their treatment plan. So what you see here is they basically came in here and said, okay, here's the pain patterns that align with it being nociceptive. And then here are the interventions that we're going to include in our treatment plan. And then they did the same thing for neuropathic and also central sensitization. I'm going to get that. No, I'm not. I'm almost 50. It's not happening. And I cut this off. There's another page and a half of them outlining, here's the mechanism, here's what was the evidence, here's what the treatment is. So from that perspective, they did a great job. This is the social history that they captured on this particular gentleman. And I'm going to give you a moment to read this. And I do want you to read this with intent, because I'm going to be asking you, where do you see some implicit bias in their description of this young man? And if you're online, we're waiting on people to give thumbs up. That's what we're doing. So we're not just trying to make you feel like your signal just died. We're just waiting. So we're finna start talking about some Zipcode data, but this group of authors talk about that their approach was biopsychosocial in nature. What does that mean to you? How would you describe that? And you can use language that would be a description to a peer, or it could be language that would be a description to a community member. But how do you describe biopsychosocial? So somebody said, taking into account social and psychological history, extrinsic factors, incorporation of medical, psychological, and social factors. They're like, just use the word, Lisa. The integration of complex person reality. I love that description. So the whole person, context. What else we got up here? Holistic care. Life is complicated all day, every day. So I totally agree with all of those. And so if you think about what the therapist did in this case study, it looks fairly thorough. Would you agree? Would you be like, yeah, gold star. Y'all did a great job. And so then when you are thinking about this 5-step process that we're borrowing from the nursing model, it looks like they did all those things as well. Would you agree? They're like, yeah, let's go to lunch, Lisa. But here's something that I want to ask you about. Because assessment and evaluation are not the same processes, right? And my friend over here is shaking my head. He's like, yeah, girl, tell him. So with assessment, it tends to have this ongoing component. It can be very individualized based on the signs and symptoms that present, and there's a feedback component. There typically should be a feedback component. With evaluation is supposed to bring some closure to whatever it is that you're assessing, where you should be able to go, we know what this is, or we know what to do, or we know where it's at, which means that there's a judgment piece, right? And so Matt before me did a beautiful job of talking about EBP, right? So evidence-based practice. And normally that judgment comes from the clinician, right? So that's normally who gets to decide on the evaluation. And typically it's applied against a standard. Now here's my question to you, and you don't have to put it out loud because we're not going to throw you under the bus. But how many of your evaluations could really be rooted against a standard? When you look at, okay, we did all of these assessments, we took the client's story, we got their origin story, here's what we thought their prognosis was going to be, here's what we thought their rehab potential was going to be, their restorative potential. How often is that actually applied against a standard? Or is the standard you? And if the standard is you, which I'm going to say 90% of the time it is, that means there are certain groups that are getting a more favorable opinion than others. It's just human nature. And so therefore, that evaluation allows us an opportunity to say, okay, how can we push back on our implicit, or for some of us, just downright explicit bias, right? And so when you think about the term bias, it's not always negative. So there can be this action of supporting or opposing a particular person or thing in an unfair way, which influences your judgment. There's no way around it. Everybody has implicit bias because we're all animals, and it's all about survival. So even with this gentleman, in my opinion, there were some places where I saw definite implicit bias. What did you see in his story? And then I'll tell you what I saw. And remember, it can be positive or negative. So implicit bias isn't always negative. So somebody said asking about drug use, right? The excellent home support. That triggered me when I read this. right? Because I was like, then what's not excellent, right? So excellent family support, the assumption that he lives with a family and that they're supportive. Didn't have a job, alcohol, smoking, drug use in the history, the social situation. Somebody's like, wait a minute, he's 29, living with a parent. But it's an excellent situation, right? And now you're hearing my implicit bias in that, because it might be the perfect, they might have all agreed upon that. So yes, he doesn't work, but he's in school full time. So there are definitely places in that narrative from the therapist's view where you can see their perspective, their slant. And that's going to happen every time we write a note. But you've got to make sure that you have a system in place that allows you to check that. And that's where I see Zipcode data being really helpful for you. And so when I looked at it, I saw implicit bias in every step of the way. Now, granted, I will be the same person that will admit I see racism everywhere. I see sexism everywhere. I see ableism. I see it all. So I am very biased. Some of that's from my lived experience. Some of that's from my research. But I see the isms all the time. I'm like, I see dead people all the time. Right? But even when I pushed back upon my own bias and I said, okay, let me look at this case, I still saw places where there was bias in this particular case study. And so I pulled this image because I thought this was really good. So this is the pain and disabilities driver model. Y'all are probably familiar with this. Y'all are like, yay, good job, Lisa. So what it looks at here is we've already talked about nociceptive, we've talked about nervous system dysfunction, but I love this conversation about comorbidity drivers. Did they ask him about sleep? Wait, somebody? They asked him about quantity and quality of sleep, right? So then if we go on up, if we talked about maladaptive cognitions and behaviors, and yesterday's presenter did that with flair, so I feel like I should have some flair when I do that. But she was just rock starish anyway, right? So now I'm like, oh, I'm the girl stuck by the mic. I can't even compete with that. So I'm like, dang it, and she was fabulous. So then also we've got these contextual drivers, right? So occupational, social factors. And that sometimes gets really difficult for us as therapists, especially when our lived experiences are very different from the clients we have the privilege of serving. So that's where Zipcode and local data can help you as well. Because sometimes you don't even know what questions to ask because we live very segregated lives. And so when you think about chronic pain, this is a great infographic, which says, okay, if we think about the burden of chronic pain, sleep disturbances, occupational disturbances, energy, which we've talked about all those things, but also really kind of diving into these relationships, intimacy, and social isolation, right? Then on top of that, we've got what are the social consequences, we've got healthcare talks, conversations, and also how are they doing with their emotional functioning and their presentation within their relationships, right? So we know that there is a disproportionate burden upon persons with chronic pain. And so this is from the guys that are part of this practical pain management, which I thought was a good attempt at what they tried to say was, okay, these are protective factors, and then these are gonna be risk factors that increase risk. So they did try to have this binary conversation about this, which I think would be nice for the novice, but I think all of you in this room as global experts, you would agree that these things happen on a spectrum, right? They're not that clean and easy. But this is what is becoming pretty clear and easy. So this is an article that looked at the influences on neighborhood characteristics and how that influenced pain and physical function in youth at risk for chronic pain. And if you look down here in the middle, and I'll read this to you, it says that low-risk participants living in residencies with more walkability, closer proximity to parks, and a higher proportion of neighborhood residents having college degrees, those tend to be the people that were at lower risk of having chronic pain. Then in this article, they also talked about, they stratified it too by severity, right? So even within that risk pool, what was the severity within that group? And what they found over and over again was neighborhood characteristics matter. So my question to you is if we know that neighborhood characteristics matter, if we know that community characteristics matter, how are you going to do that in your 1 hour evaluation? You're going to hit the streets like Dr. Snow, start knocking on people's doors. For those of you from the epi world, y'all know who Dr. Snow is, right? But it's really hard when you start thinking about the fact that I have this human in front of me with all of this network, and how am I going to get all of this information? So this is actually a study that was done in Japan, where what they looked at is they looked at neighborhood walkability in relationships to knee and low back pain. Same thing. Strong relationships between what is your access to physical green spaces, what's your access to safe, walkable places, and also your severity and sometimes even your presentation of pain, right? So why do we not ask patients about their networks, their neighborhoods, their communities? What is the social or physical characteristics of the 5 people closest to them? Because the literature suggests that you are the average of the 5 people that you are closest to. And we know that from pediatric data all the way up to seniors. So why do you think we don't ask? Why do we not ask? Lack of awareness. Thank you for owning that. Not enough time. Arrogance of the importance. Ooh, that was good. That was good. Because we will spend most of our time on the 20%, right? So we know now that when you talk about social and structural determinants of health, that the things we do in our clinic, in our research, only accounts for about 20% of outcomes. The rest of this is really what matters, but we're not really addressing it. We're not even asking about it. All right. And so I want you to take your phones out, and I want you to hit that zip code, and I know I'm going to be over time, but this is worth it. This part's worth it. Did it come up for you? Put your zip code in there. Because where we're at now with big data sets and usability and interactiveness is it's literally is just a click away. And in one click, you can know about disposable income, you can know about medical expenditures, neighborhood characteristics, household characteristics, lifestyle behaviors, even diversity index, which if you are thinking about where to maybe land your next clinic or maybe where to host a research project, that's really good. Also, if you're just trying to figure out the context about the human in front of you, this is a really good site. Yes. You got to scroll down. Scroll down. Let me know when you get there. And so you're going to see the tapestry segmentation. You get there? So it says explore your zip code. Got it? And throw your zip code in there, and you should get a printout that looks like this. I just heard somebody cuss. You just found out about your neighborhood. And so those online, you should be able to access this as well. And so in 3 minutes, I promise you I'm going to finish at 12:25. What I want you to see here is so they have basically put together 65 elements that allow them to identify significant parts, significant attributes related to your neighborhoods. So this is for me. I live in 71203 in Monroe, Louisiana. My neighborhood is considered a Middleburg, which I'm going to tell you what that means here in a minute. And what this is this is the beta weights. These are the percentages. So then also we've got high Rust Belt traditions. That's our second highest attribute. And then there's some city commons attributes related to us. You can see our disposable income here. So almost 60% of my community makes less than $50,000 as a household. We are one of the 10th poorest congressional districts in the United States. Then also here, you can kind of see what people are paying for medical insurance. So it is very expensive to be poor. Very expensive to be poor. And then you can see data in regards to how many people live within that zip code. So in Monroe, Louisiana, basically what it says about us is that we are a country living place, semi-rural. We're fairly traditional, family-oriented. The backbone comes from our industrial roots. We've got a lot of mixed couple families, and we've got some singles. Most of our homes are older developments. That's key. Then also, in this particular tapestry, we've got a lot of single parents and a lot of single parent persons' households. And so the nice thing about this particular site, and this comes from ArcGIS, is right now it's going to tell me about what's going to be the burden to that person coming in and out of my clinic. It's going to tell me about maybe their availability, their financial availability for paying co-pays or other medical expenses related to their care. It's going to tell me about who their neighbors are, right? It's going to tell me also that maybe I need some non-traditional hours for my clinic as well, because I've got this high percentage of single parents and single person households. So when you looked at yours, did you agree or disagree with their descriptors? And somebody just yell out to me. I see some people going, yeah, right? And the thing is that is not even the most powerful data set. So that ArcGIS data set actually breaks things down into what's called 14 life modes, and there are attributes associated with each of these life modes. But if anybody has heard of Deloitte even has more powerful data. But Deloitte is not putting theirs in a public space. You got to pay for their stuff. But Deloitte has it down to a science that based on someone's credit card expenditures, they can tell you if that person has chronic pain or not, based on what they're buying. So that is where we're at in regards to this data. And so for ArcGIS, these are some other data points that are available to you. Now, they have some stuff that's free, then they have other stuff that's behind that paywall. But that, look at your zip code, that's powerful by itself. And that's a freebie. And before I get ready to go, because I got to stop talking, I know there are some of you that are like, wait a minute, Elisa, but they're not going to get all of us right. No, they're not. But they're going to give you a really great starting place. And if you're nervous about having a conversation with a client about their context, you can actually print down this profile and say, here's what it says is going on in your community. What's true, what's false, right? So it gives you a starting place, especially if you're still working on your intercultural development and you don't feel comfortable talking to certain groups of people. It's a really great starting place. The other thing I want to leave you with is think about people as ecosystems. Every person is an ecosystem. And so when all you're taking in is your like basic pain assessment and not thinking about what's going on in their neighborhoods and their communities, you're missing 80%. Just know. Your evaluation, I don't care how great you think you are, world, global, pain experts extraordinaire with your cape on, you're missing 80% of it if you're not looking at these contextual factors. And so this is going to be my last slide before I get in trouble. But I told you I was going to break the rules, and I told you I didn't think we was going to finish. Physical conditions can be anything related to lead, air, noise, walk scores. There are data sets out there for all of this. And we're going to make sure you have this PDF so that you know where to search for these things. There's also data sets that look at service conditions and also social conditions. And we're going to give you some resources for that as well. And so this just kind of talks about air quality index. For a gentleman, for that particular guy that in our case, I'm going to want to know what his air quality is, right? Because I'm a little concerned about his inflammation profile. And so if his goal is to be walking back and forth and he's got an area with really poor air condition, I'm gonna have to have a conversation with him about wearing a mask. And in other countries, that's a norm. That's just part of the practice. If you're gonna tell your patients to go out and walk in a community with really poor air quality, you need to have a strategy for how you're gonna reduce their risk. All right, so there are also ones on here about food insecurity. I'm just gonna quickly kind of show y'all these, and then I'm gonna be quiet so I don't get in trouble. County health rankings, oh my God, that's a game changer. And if you are in a community where you feel like your state is starting to decrease their reimbursement, if you figure out a way to start contributing to the data related to this, especially in the United States, it will slow down that reimbursement issue you're having in your state. Because states want to know how to impact this, and we as physios, as rehab professionals, we've not really entered into that conversation. So, crime data, if you noticed, it's all red. I live in the hood. And then this one is basically the social vulnerability index. This one's by the CDC. There's not a great data set to look at social cohesion, but this is a proxy of it. Because what the data suggests is that if you live in a neighborhood where y'all don't really work together as a community, or it has been structured so that you can't work together as a community, you tend to have more vulnerability during times of human or natural disaster. And so the CVI is a good source for that. This is a great YouTube video. For those of you who don't believe that this is real, this is a great YouTube video. And I think that's it. We're gonna be done. Oh, the end of his story was it took them 6 months to get him walking to back and forth to school. And I do wonder if they would have used Zipcode data, if they might have thought about some other things going on in his context, if we could have shortened that time. So, but they thought they did a great job, so we're gonna celebrate that, right? Because we meet people where they're at. And gotta leave you with a Black History quote, because it's Black History, right? For one more day. One more day, it gets to be my month. So this one is, do the best you can until you know better, and then when you know better, do better. And now you know that there's some big data sets out there available to you. So, and I'm done. Those are the learning objectives. This is how I feel when you don't use the data available to you. And then this is my backstory. And I talked a long time. And y'all only got 1 minute for questions.
I know, right?
That was intentional.
So I'm going to just do one quick question. They will have access to the handouts with all those awesome resources?
Yes.
Okay, so there were a couple of people in the chat, so don't worry. You'll have all the links and QR codes, so no worries. You want to take just one?
Yeah.
All right. So this is from Dalton. As a therapist working with someone, how can we best use this information to help them towards their goals, or is this information that I can share to help that patient understand their possible prognosis?
I think it goes both ways. So I will typically use this data to help someone understand their pathophysiology, right? So to help them understand kind of the physiology behind their origin story. And I will often use it so that people get out of that blaming place. Because we will talk to people and we will introduce guilt and shame into their story unnecessarily. And so I want them to understand the structural things going around them. It doesn't keep them from responsibility, but it does help them to see that there's always personal and environmental factors, especially with chronic pain. So that's the first part. And then the second part of it is I will use Zipcode big data sets to help us build a strategy. Because in my community, I can't tell someone to go walk for 30 minutes. We don't have complete sidewalk systems, right? So if I'm gonna put you on a walking plan, then we've gotta have a conversation about where can you walk? Because sometimes it's just walk in your home. And then I'll introduce them to the lady that does the 3 mile walk, right? It's YouTube, it's free, and they can walk in their homes. So I will incorporate that in there for both assessment and also intervention and patient education. Great question.
Awesome. And that is the perfect timing. So just thank you so much, Lisa. That was amazing. All right.